The infant's heart monitor just flatlined. Someone do something! Panic exploded through the maternity ward, alarms shrieking as the head nurse froze in terror. The so-called maintenance guy stepped forward, ignoring the glares from staff who thought he shouldn't touch anything medical. He reached for the emergency line like he'd done this in battlefields before. And that's when everyone realized the newborn wasn't the only life he was fighting for. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. He didn't shout, he didn't panic. He just breathed, steady and controlled, as if he'd been waiting 5 years for this exact moment. He wasn't here by accident. The single father tightened his jaw, gripping a small charm in his pocket. It was a tiny gold ring, once his wife's, now the only proof she ever existed. The world believed she died 5 years ago in a hospital explosion. He buried his grief and raised their child alone, building a life in shadows. But he'd never buried hope. The night shift always smelled of bleach and exhaustion. He moved through the maze of bright corridors and locked rooms like someone who'd memorized every screw and circuit. His tool belt clinked softly as he walked, boots worn from too many double shifts. Most people passed him without a second glance. Just another electrician in the walls. But beneath the uniform beat the pulse of a man who once saved soldiers under gunfire. A man who rebuilt power grids in war zones. Those skills didn't vanish just because tragedy tried to break him. He paused by the neonatal unit window. Tiny shapes slept under warm lights, fragile, fighting. His own daughter had been one of them once. Too small, too early, too close to being another name carved into memory. She survived while her mother didn't. At least, that's what the hospital reported. He rubbed the ring in his pocket like a prayer he wasn't ready to speak aloud. Tonight, the place felt different. The fluorescent lights flickered, a warning only he seemed to notice. He checked his watch. Another hour until he met the sitter outside. He needed every paycheck to keep the roof over their heads and his little girl in school. A radio crackled on his hip. "Maintenance, we've got a surge on the maternity floor. Get up there." He straightened. Surges didn't happen here, not unless something bigger was going wrong. He pushed open the stairwell door and took the steps 2 at a time. His mind sharpened, training resurfacing like oxygen after drowning. He reached the floor, and chaos swallowed him. Nurses rushed between rooms, machines beeped off rhythm, families cried out for answers. The emergency generator hadn't kicked in fully. That shouldn't be possible. A newborn cried sharply from a side room. No staff near, no chart visible. Something screamed wrong. He slipped inside to calm the infant and paused. A blanket wrapped the baby tight, and tucked into the fold, a gold ring. Not just any ring, his wife's ring. The ring that vanished months after she died, stolen from his locker by some stranger he never identified. His heart stopped. Breath caught. Muscles stiffened like he'd stepped into an old nightmare. He scanned the room. He wasn't supposed to be here. None of this was supposed to happen. But fate didn't care about supposed to. His fingers shook as he lifted the ring. The engraving on the inside glimmered under the fluorescent buzz, E and A, until the end. She was declared dead 5 years ago, but this ring meant one thing. Someone was lying. He looked at the baby, alone, abandoned, a silent plea in tiny, trembling fists. His mind raced. How did his wife's ring end up here? Why was this infant hidden away? What else had they lied about? Behind him, frantic voices closed in. He slipped the ring into his pocket, and with a quiet vow only his heart could hear, he prepared. Not just to fix a broken system, but to expose the truth it buried alive. He forced himself back into motion, methodical as ever. A clipboard lay discarded nearby, stamped with the hospital's crest. He picked it up, scanning the form. No patient name. Just a handwritten code, X9B. Restricted wards always used letters before numbers, and this one didn't appear on any directory. His pulse hammered. He'd mapped every inch of this place during after-hours fixes. If X9B existed, it was hidden behind locked doors no maintenance badge should open. He cradled the baby just long enough to calm the cries. Someone approached, heels tapping fast. He set the infant in a safer bassinet and stepped into the hall like nothing had happened. But his eyes had already changed. Tonight, he would follow the wires others ignored. He wouldn't look away again. He forced himself to walk casually, even though every nerve screamed to run straight to the hidden ward. The hallway outside the storage nursery felt colder now, like the building itself was holding its breath. A nurse in lavender scrubs rushed past him, not even sparing a glance. Good, he needed to stay invisible. The maintenance radio buzzed again. Generator check. We're still getting signal fluctuations up here. Fix it before morning. The irritation in the supervisor's voice was familiar, dismissive, and right now, useful. He could vanish into the work expected of him. He headed down the service corridor toward the mechanical room, passing families asleep in chairs, heads resting against one another, unaware of the storm gathering beneath them. His boots echoed on the concrete floor. Each step steadied him. He needed to think like the soldier he once was. Observe, plan, execute. The ring in his pocket felt like a pulse. He reached the power hub and opened the metal cabinet. Wires coiled tight like veins feeding the hospital's lifeblood. This section should be flawless. He redesigned it himself years back, before tragedy shattered everything. The backup system was failing in ways that weren't accidental. Someone was tampering with critical pathways, forcing vulnerabilities that shouldn't exist. He crouched, tracing the wiring with practiced fingers. A junction was loosened. Not broken, not sloppy, just subtly altered. A delay switch, designed to cause enough panic for staff to rely on manual overrides. It made no sense. Unless someone needed specific areas unmonitored. He stared at the wires, realization chilling him. Whatever was happening wasn't random. Someone engineered this, someone who didn't expect him to notice. He tightened the connection, running diagnostics. Lights steadied. The alarms muffled behind walls. The immediate danger faded, but the larger threat grew teeth. As he worked, his mind replayed the engraving in the ring, until the end. A promise he'd clung to through every lonely night shift. A promise the hospital tried to bury under rubble and lies. He shut the cabinet and leaned against it for a moment, breathing, grounding. If Amelia's ring resurfaced here, then she wasn't a memory. She was somewhere close, alive, hurting, hidden. And that tiny newborn, unregistered, tucked away in a back room, was connected. He pulled out his tablet, logged into the maintenance network, and disguised the access under a standard generator check. He navigated toward the neonatal database. A locked record flagged with the code X9B blinked back at him. Restricted access. Unauthorized attempts auto-report to administration. A heartbeat of hesitation. Then a decision. He used a buried encryption override, the kind he'd written as a safeguard back when he still believed this place saved lives more than it concealed mistakes. The file cracked open just long enough to show one chilling entry. Mother, unknown. Infant blood match, pending confirmation. Ward, Special Care Unit, 9B. Unit 9B existed, in the digital shadows. His breath turned to ice. He shut everything down fast, wiping trace logs. The fewer footsteps he left, the better. He wasn't up against laziness or incompetence. This was organized, controlled by someone with authority and fear of exposure. A sudden voice snapped behind him. "You're not authorized to be in that database." The floor manager stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp with suspicion. He straightened, face neutral. "Power surge corrupted half the system. I'm clearing the errors before the monitors collapse again." She hesitated. She didn't understand the tech. She just enjoyed power. After a moment, she sniffed and walked away. "Make it quick and stay out of places you don't belong." He waited until her footsteps vanished. He did belong here, maybe more than anyone else. He reattached his radio and stepped back into the corridor. The air tasted heavy with truth pressing to the surface. He thought of his daughter waiting at home, cheeks smudged with paint, laughter like sunlight through storm clouds. She needed him careful. She needed him alive. But he couldn't let another child be swallowed by the same darkness that stole her mother. He passed the window again. The abandoned baby now slept peacefully in a proper crib. Nurses checked vitals, acting like nothing unusual had happened, like the ring hadn't just resurrected the past. He paused long enough to memorize every face in that room. Any one of them could be a threat or a reluctant ally. He would figure out which soon enough. Then, quietly, he checked the badge scanner near the secure elevators. Only high-level clearance opened the restricted floors. His card wouldn't work. Not yet. But the person who tampered with the power systems would need to move through those same doors, and power failures had a way of forcing manual overrides, temporary windows where rules broke down. He smiled, small and dangerous. "We'll see each other soon," he murmured under his breath. Not sure if he meant Amelia, the truth, or the people who feared it most. The hospital lights flickered again, briefly, like a warning or a signal. He tightened his tool belt. He had a shift to finish, and a secret world to expose. Because tonight the hospital tried to hide something. But he wasn't hiding anymore. The cafeteria at 3:17 a.m. always smelled like burnt coffee and overcooked eggs. He slid into the last open chair at a corner table, trying to calm his pulse. He wasn't sure if his hands were shaking from adrenaline or the jolt of truth he'd swallowed whole in that storage nursery. A janitor named Marco sat across from him, stirring sugar into his cup with way too much energy for this hour. The man talked to everyone and everything, vending machines, broken elevators, and occasionally himself. Tonight, Marco eyed him with a strange glint. "You look like somebody who's seen a ghost," Marco said. He stiffened. "Just a long shift." Marco chuckled. "Long shifts don't make a man clutch his pocket like there's gold in it." His gaze flicked to where the ring hid. "Relax, I ain't a thief, not anymore." He inhaled sharply, not a good time to panic. "Just tired," he repeated. Marco leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You think nobody around here knows who you are?" That froze him. "I'm just maintenance." Marco snorted. "Yeah, and I'm the King of Spain." He tapped his temple. "Word gets around, people talk, especially when someone's overqualified for changing light bulbs." He said nothing. Silence could be armor. Marco continued, voice thoughtful now. "Saw your name in a classified roster once. Military engineer, combat medic cross-certification, awards and citations most folks frame." He didn't know whether to run or listen harder. Marco sipped his coffee casually. Funny how a guy like that ends up here, tightening screws for people who pretend not to see him. He swallowed hard. "Life happens." "Yeah." Marco nodded, eyes softening. "Loss happens." The words hit too close. He glanced down, fighting the urge to press the ring again. Marco leaned in. "Listen, you ain't invisible to everyone. Some of us notice when a man is drowning quietly." Before he could respond, a voice slashed across the cafeteria. "Maintenance." The floor manager stood by the double doors, arms folded. "The director wants you on the executive level. Now." Marco gave him a slow, warning look. "Keep your head on a swivel." He stood and left without a word, steps echoing down the hall that led toward polished floors and elevated egos. The executive level was a world apart from where he usually existed. Quiet, expensive, sterile perfection. Power displayed in framed certificates and designer furniture. The administrator's office door was open, and he was motioned inside. Dr. Lucian Archer sat behind a desk large enough to land a drone on. Suits never wrinkled, hair never misplaced. Eyes like a scalpel, sharp, cold, precise. "You were seen accessing secured system data," Archer said before he even sat. He forced calm. "There was a surge. Files were corrupted. I cleared logs to restore equipment." Archer stood slowly, rounding the desk, every step measured. "Your job is to keep the lights on, not to play investigator." The door shut with a metallic click. Archer leaned close. "I don't know what you think you saw tonight, but curiosity in the wrong corridors tends to shorten employment." Heat rose beneath his skin. "If something threatens patient safety, I fix it. That's what the job requires." Archer smiled without warmth. "Don't confuse availability with permission." There it was. The hierarchy pressed like a boot on his back. He'd met men like Archer overseas, men in command only because power protected them, not because they earned respect. Archer adjusted his cufflinks. "I trust we understand each other. Stay in your lane." He wasn't given time to respond. The administrator's attention already shifted to emails, dismissing him as if he were a smudge on the floor. He turned to leave, then stopped. On the corner of Archer's desk lay a folder stamped "Confidential" with 3 chilling letters, X9B. Archer saw his eyes flicker. "That file is none of your concern." His jaw tightened. Nothing here should be hidden. A scoff. "Idealism is charming, but hospitals run on reputation. Some truths do more harm than good." He stood still, rooted in the quiet anger of someone pushed too far. Then he walked out without looking back. In the elevator, his reflection stared back. Dark circles, weary eyes, a man underestimated. But now determination sharpened everything. The ring wasn't a coincidence. The baby wasn't a glitch. Downstairs, the hospital's hum returned. Ventilation whispering through ducts, machines sighing in cycles. Life being kept alive by people who sometimes forgot why they came here. He entered a waiting area, where a young nurse sat scrolling through her phone. She looked up, startled. "You okay?" she asked gently. "You look like you just got yelled at." He exhaled. "Something like that." "Don't let Archer get to you," she said. "Everyone knows he thinks he's royalty. Everyone knows, not hidden, just tolerated." She added quietly, "Some people here actually care if the hospital hurts people." Hope flickered. Maybe allies existed, even quiet ones. But he needed proof, facts, a plan. For now, he blended in again, just another blue-collar worker beneath the glow of fluorescent lights. Except he wasn't. He made a silent vow. He would break into Ward 9B. He would find her. He would expose the truth. They tried to bury the past. But tonight he'd begun digging. The nursery lights glowed softer now, dimmed for night hours, but his pulse throbbed louder than any alarm. He had to make sure the baby was safe. Whoever left that ring with the child knew exactly what they were implying. Someone wanted him to find it. Someone wanted hope resurrected. He paused just outside the supply nursery, his gaze locking onto the newborn now settled in a proper crib. A nurse scanned the infant's vitals, logging data into the chart without acknowledging the earlier chaos. For a moment, it looked like everything had returned to normal. But he knew normal was a lie. He stepped inside, keeping his movements unobtrusive. The nurse turned slightly, surprised to see him. "Oh, maintenance," she said, as if that explained why she shouldn't care. "Just ensuring the backup monitors are stable," he replied, masking the urgency tensioning his voice. She answered with a polite nod before walking toward the hall, entirely unaware that the truth she'd wrapped in a blanket now weighed down his pocket like a burning secret. He moved closer to the crib. The baby's breathing was shallow but steady, a tiny hand clenched and unclenched, fighting its own battle for survival. He leaned down before he could stop himself, whispering words meant only for the child. "You're not alone. I won't let them disappear you." The baby squirmed, a shaky whimper escaping. It felt almost like acknowledgement. He checked the chart. No printed patient ID, no mother's name. Just infant, pending identification maternal record, X9B access level, restricted. His chest tightened. They were burying this child under paperwork the same way they buried Amelia under twisted metal. He gently tucked the blanket around the newborn, then turned to leave, only to collide with a nurse entering the doorway. She steadied herself, glaring. "You don't belong in here." Her tone was sharp, defensive. He kept calm. "Electrical disturbance earlier. I'm double-checking lines. Wouldn't want the system to spike again." She stared a beat too long. "We'll handle patient care," she said, emphasis biting. He nodded and stepped back, letting the moment pass. But when she brushed by the crib, she adjusted something too quickly, like she was covering her tracks. His instincts screamed she wasn't just protecting the baby, she was hiding something else entirely. He didn't confront her, not yet. Instead, he stepped out into the hallway where he could still watch through the glass. She positioned herself like a guard, back stiff, eyes darting. Definitely not routine. Someone else was involved in this, but at least one person had tried to help, whoever placed Amelia's ring beside that infant. He walked away, mind racing. He needed more intel. The hospital architecture gave him an advantage. Maintenance shafts and hidden service tunnels connecting floors like veins beneath skin. He knew them intimately. If 9B was locked behind official clearance, then he would find the unofficial entrance. He headed down a stairwell, pulling out his flashlight, past floor 3, past 2, and down into storage-level access only night staff used. The concrete walls down here were older, rougher, part of the original structure before the hospital expanded. He traced his fingers along familiar indentations until a faint vibration buzzed beneath his palm. Airflow. He found the ventilation gate. It hummed with a chilled current, not typical for this section. Cooling systems for restricted zones often had separate ducts. It matched the digital hint he'd seen in the database. Unit 9B wasn't mythical, it was hidden. He knelt to inspect. Screws recently replaced. Fresh scoring along edges. Someone opened this frequently. He slid out his multi-tool, starting to remove the panel. His grip was steady until a sudden voice pierced the silence. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" He turned, finding Archer's assistant, a thin woman with clipped bangs and sharper eyes, standing stiffly at the end of the hall. Her badge glittered. Administrative Coordinator. He pocketed the screwdriver calmly. Coolant line sounded off from upstairs, tracing the source before a leak damages equipment. She crossed her arms. "We didn't report any malfunction. That's because I caught it before it spread." A stare-off. She was calculating whether to push further. Finally, she forced a strained smile. "If you notice anything else concerning, I expect a direct report. We don't want unnecessary disruptions." He returned a polite nod. "Of course." She lingered, watching, assessing. Then she walked away, heels echoing sharp distrust down the corridor. As soon as her steps faded, he finished unscrewing the panel and swung it open. Cold air rushed out, smelling faintly of antiseptic and secrecy. The duct stretched into shadowed unknown. He wasn't going in yet. A direct attempt would trigger surveillance. But now he knew the route, and routes could be exploited. He resecured the panel and took a slow breath. Every cautionary voice in his head warned him to stop. Every memory of Amelia told him to continue. He envisioned her smiling with tired eyes after giving birth, the warmth of her hand in his, her voice promising they would make it. Then flames swallowed the maternity ward, and the official shrugged explanations carved a lie into his heart. That lie was crumbling now. He headed back toward the elevators. Morning wasn't far. His shift would end soon, and he'd return home to a little girl who asked every night if angels could return. He always said love made impossible things happen. Tonight, those words felt like prophecy. Before leaving, he returned once more to that window of sleeping newborns. The hidden baby lay there, tiny, alive, and undeniably connected to everything he'd lost. He placed his palm on the glass. "I'll come back," he whispered. "Not just for the infant, for Amelia, for truth long buried, for a family stolen by the powerful." He walked off into the dim light of the corridor, quiet, steady, unshakable. No alarms blared, no lights flickered, but a war had just begun. The city outside was still asleep when his shift ended. He stepped out into the cool dawn, dew clinging to his boots, the streetlights dimming as the sun threatened to rise. He should have headed home immediately. His daughter would be up soon, asking for breakfast and hugs and color pencils for school. But his mind stayed trapped in that hospital hallway. A stolen ring, an unregistered infant, a hidden ward. He stood beside his old sedan for a long moment, gripping the roof as if the metal could steady him. He whispered to himself, low enough only the morning air could hear, "She's alive." The words tasted impossible, but the weight in his pocket promised otherwise. He drove home with caution rather than urgency. He needed clarity when he walked through the door. His daughter deserved that much. When he stepped inside their small apartment, he paused, listening. Her soft breathing came from the next room, rhythmic and safe. He eased the door open to find her wrapped in dinosaur sheets, curls splayed across her pillow. He smiled despite the chaos ripping his thoughts apart. He crouched and brushed hair from her forehead. "Daddy's here," he whispered. And she sighed as if she heard him somewhere inside her dreams. After the sitter left and breakfast was eaten, toast sliced into funny shapes, he packed her lunch and kissed her cheek 3 times like always. Routine, even now, was a shield. He watched her tiny figure join classmates, the door of the school swallowing innocence behind it. Once she was inside, his posture hardened. He wasn't just a father anymore, he was a man on mission. He returned to the hospital long before his shift. He wore his uniform again, walking with deliberate calm into the service entrance. Staff barely looked his way. Perfect. The morning brought noise and bustling efficiency. Doctors barked orders. Nurses hustled charts. Janitors rolled carts down squeaky tiles. Everyone had a job. Everyone believed they knew the boundaries of their world. He knew better now. He headed straight for the main server room. Access panels stacked the walls like the brainstem of the building. A security camera blinked in the corner, watching the wrong places. He'd designed a blind spot beneath it years ago. Humans trusted systems more than they trusted people. He slipped into the gap and powered up a maintenance terminal. He bypassed the default view and opened utility schematics. The map loaded in sections, every authorized floor illuminated in green. Then he entered a code he wrote years earlier for emergency lockdown overrides. A red line 42. More floors appeared. Dim lines, restricted sectors. Off-the-grid tunnels embedded into the architecture. Unit 9B pulsed faintly. A ghost floor. He clicked the route. 2 access points, a secure elevator with high-level encryption, and the ventilation crawlspace he found last night. He zoomed further. Energy patterns showed running equipment. There were lights down there, machines. Life support levels steady. Someone down there was alive. He printed a small section of the map and folded it tightly into his pocket. As he stepped out, he nearly collided with Marco. "Whoa, careful, soldier," Marco said, eyeing him with a knowing smirk. He stiffened. "I'm not." Marco dismissed the correction with a wave. "You're not what they think you are, either." His voice lowered. "If you dig, dig fast. Rats bite when cornered." Before he could respond, Marco winked and strolled away, humming as if ignorance were bliss. He made his way to the maternity wing again. Staff changed shifts. Chaos in transition meant fewer eyes paying attention. He positioned himself near the hidden baby's crib, pretending to fix monitor cords. The infant stirred, fist pressing weakly into the air. The blanket shifted, and he saw a small medical tag tucked deep in the folds. He glanced around and eased it free. Tiny letters. Internal code. Patient X, do not transfer. No birth date, no mother. Just a barcode. He slid the tag into his pocket beside the map. A nurse noticed him lingering. "Everything okay?" He forced a smile. "Just making sure this little one's equipment stays stable." He tapped the screen lightly. "Surges like last night are dangerous." She nodded, distracted by a beeping monitor across the room. "Some nights feel cursed." He walked away, heart pounding. Every step confirmed it. This hospital didn't protect patients. It protected its secrets. In a quieter hallway, he pulled out his phone and typed a message into a private note. "Operation. Wake silent floor." He stared at the words. A plan forming. A countdown beginning. But first, he needed to gather proof. If he confronted Archer too soon, they'd erase everything. Erase her. Erase him. He entered the stairwell, leaning against a cold metal railing, while his mind ran with the hum of the building. Every vent, every wire, every fuse was familiar. The structure was betraying its own lies, and only he could hear the confession. His daughter's laughter echoed in his memory, the softness of her hand in his, the promise he made every night, "Daddy won't ever let anything happen to you." That vow now expanded. It included a wife he'd mourned, a newborn he'd just met, and a truth demanding justice. He checked the time, still hours before nightfall, hours before he could move freely. Patience sharpened into resolve. People like Archer believed position equaled control. They believed men like him were tools, not threats. That arrogance would be their downfall. By the way, where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. He tucked his chin, pushed off the wall, and walked with quiet intent. He would play the role. Smile when required. Vanish into corners. But tonight, he would enter Ward 9B. He would find Amelia. And he would drag the truth screaming into the light. By evening, the energy inside the hospital shifted. Visitors cleared out. Lights dimmed, and the building began its quiet transformation from public care center to controlled facility. That shift in power dynamics always made his skin crawl. Daytime hid the truth in busyness. Nighttime revealed the cracks. He clocked back in just as the sun bled orange behind the skyline. The front desk barely noticed him swipe through. Maintenance worked in the shadows, after all, present but unseen. Perfect for someone with secrets to uncover. He headed toward the executive level again. If Archer planned to bury something permanently, he would start by reinforcing the walls around it. Elias needed to see exactly how much opposition he was up against. The elevator chimed, too smooth to be innocent. As the doors opened, Archer stood inside, arms folded, expecting him like a man ready for a show. "Step inside," Archer said, the command wrapped in false politeness. Elias hesitated only a moment before entering. The doors slid shut with a soft thud, an ending and a beginning. Archer pressed a button for the top floor. "I heard you've been enthusiastic about your duties," he continued, his voice sharp as polished glass. "I fix what's broken," Elias replied simply. Archer's eyes narrowed. "Some things here are not meant to be fixed. I'm sure you understand." He adjusted his tie, gaze pinning Elias in place. Curiosity is dangerous in medicine, especially from someone with unofficial access to classified schematics. The elevator hummed upward. Elias remained silent. He knew the type. Men who'd never risked anything beyond their reputation but wielded fear like a weapon. Archer continued. "You were a decorated engineer once. War hero. Why settle for this?" His eyes flicked downward, taking in the scuffed boots, the fraying uniform. Elias clenched his jaw. "I go where I'm needed." "And right now," Archer said, stepping closer, "you need to stay in your lane." The elevator dinged. Top floor. He stepped out into a hallway drenched in soft lighting and silent wealth. Archer followed, his tone darker now. "There are files," he said quietly, "that hold nothing but pain. Imagine reopening wounds, tearing families apart again, just to prove a point." Elias stared at him, heart pounding in stubborn defiance. Truth isn't pain, lies are. Archer's expression twitched, crack in the mask. "This conversation is over. Focus on the electrical issue you supposedly found." Supposedly. Archer turned and walked away, confident in his power, confident Elias would stay afraid. He didn't. As soon as Archer disappeared around the corner, Elias ducked into a nearby service closet. His hands trembled, not with fear, but anticipation. He had just confirmed everything. Archer was terrified of what he'd uncover, and a man terrified of truth is a man losing control. He waited until footsteps faded, then re-entered the hallway. At the end stood a locked door with a glowing badge reader. Authorized personnel only. Exactly what he wanted. He knelt and removed the metal panel beneath the reader, wires and circuits exposed like a nervous system. He tapped into the auxiliary node and reset the access code. A swift motion, muscle memory from countless covert repairs overseas. The lock clicked. The door opened into a surveillance hub. Monitors lined the walls, each screen displaying a different unit. Pediatrics, ICU, maternity, but one row flickered, static blocking the view. The labels beneath those cameras, SCU, Ward 9B SCU, Ward 9B SCU, Ward 9B3 angles, all scrambled. He checked the feeds manually and saw flashes, blurs of white gowns, medical restraints, harsh lights, shadows pacing. A figure curled on a bed, unmoving, sedated. His throat tightened. It could be her. He hit the playback button. A nurse entered the frame, adjusting the IV line. When she leaned in, her face revealed just long enough. Same nurse from the nursery. Something like guilt flickered in her eyes before the footage glitched again. So, she wasn't just a guard, she was a caretaker, Maybe reluctant, maybe scared. He backed away from the console, breathing uneven. This was proof. Visual, undeniable proof. Enough to start pulling at the threads harder. Except Archer appeared in the doorway behind him. "I warned you," Archer hissed. Elias spun, instinct shifting into fight mode. Archer's fist clenched around a folder, the folder, X9B. "You think you're a hero?" Archer said, "but heroes don't understand collateral." Elias forced his voice steady. "Where is she? What have you done to her?" Archer stepped forward. "She should have died that night. It would have been easier for everyone." Rage hit Elias like a white-hot strike. "She's my wife." Archer paused, not in guilt, but in calculation. "Which is why you are the worst possible person to know she's alive." Before Archer could call security, Elias moved. He shoved past him and sprinted down the hall to the elevator. Archer shouted behind him, but the doors closed before a hand could stop them. As the elevator descended, Elias pressed his palm hard against the wall, breath trembling. She was in Ward 9B. He had seen her, maybe only for a second, but it was enough. Tonight, he would not sleep. Tonight, he would prepare. He would break through the barriers built to erase her. He would rebuild the life Archer tried to demolish. And he would do it with the one thing they didn't expect. A father's fury sharpened by love. He stood outside the staff entrance, lungs burning from the sprint out of the executive wing. The cold night air slapped him back inside his body. Every muscle shook, anger, fear, and something else he had almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. He leaned against the brick wall and tried to steady his breathing. Archer's words replayed like poison in his skull. She should have died that night. No, she should have come home. She should have held their daughter. She should have lived the life they built together. Instead, this hospital turned her survival into a secret. He wasn't going to let them hide her anymore. He pushed off the wall and checked the time. His shift was nearly over, but the night was far from done. He needed to see his little girl first. He had to remind himself what he was fighting for. He drove home fast, heart thundering with the revelation that Amelia was in reach. His hands tightened the steering wheel until his knuckles blanched. He imagined her waking up, confused and scared, searching for the husband she was told didn't exist anymore. When he entered the apartment, his daughter greeted him with sleepy eyes and a soft smile. "Daddy," she whispered before burying her face in his neck. Her trust grounded him. He held her a moment longer than usual. His sitter eyed him curiously. "Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." He forced a half smile. "Maybe I have." Before she could ask, he added quickly, "I'll take over. Thanks for staying late." Once alone, he tucked his daughter into bed. Watching her drift off reminded him of quiet evenings before tragedy, when he and Amelia would whisper plans about the future. He brushed a thumb across the ring in his pocket. That simple band carried an entire universe between its grooves. Now, it was a compass pointing him to truth. He sat at the kitchen table and spread out the map he printed earlier, smoothing the creases. Unit 9B, tucked between structural support and sub-level mechanical corridors. A place designed not to exist. He memorized every route leading to it. Tomorrow night would be the infiltration. There was no turning back. He grabbed a notebook and outlined tasks in block letters. Identify access cycles for Ward 9B, locate blind spots in camera coverage. Acquire legitimate clearance clone badge. Secure sedation reversal meds, disable. Alarms during extraction. Escape route through maintenance tunnels. Each step a battle. Each battle a piece of his wife returned. Morning arrived too soon. He hardly slept, but adrenaline overpowered exhaustion. He dropped off his daughter with a kiss and drove straight to the hospital. He started with subtle reconnaissance. First goal, the key card. Hospital access badges were encoded through the admin security room. Only a few high-level staff had clearance to the restricted wards. The cold-eyed assistant from yesterday, her badge would do. She hung it on a lanyard that swung mockingly around her neck as she strode across the executive floor. He observed patterns, noting when she left her desk, when she used the restroom, when she lingered by vending machines. She was predictable in a way Archer wasn't. Next objective, medical knowledge. He needed reversal meds to counter the sedatives they pumped into Amelia. He went to the pharmacy storage bay under the pretense of checking breaker faults. When the pharmacist complained about flickering lights, he nodded sympathetically while memorizing every label. He silently pocketed a vial when backs turned. A fast, invisible motion honed by years of battlefield pragmatism. Then came the question of alarms. He revisited the mechanical level, where the massive breaker network throbbed like a steel heart. Power surges could be crafted, targeted and brief, to disrupt cameras and badge locks just long enough. He would create one lag spike, one perfect collapse in the wall of lies. He crouched behind the junction box, adjusting fuses to fail on command. The system tested clean, no alerts triggered. Perfect. Still, doubt pressed in. What if he reached Amelia, but she was too far gone to know him? What if sedation erased everything they were? What if the hospital retaliated and he lost his daughter too? Then he imagined Amelia's hands, her laughter cracking the darkness, her voice calling his name. That memory pushed him forward. As he walked back toward the elevators, Marco intercepted him with 2 paper cups. "You look like you need caffeine or a priest," the janitor muttered. Elias accepted the cup with a small nod. Marco leaned against his cart. "They're watching you, you know. But here's the twist. Some of us are watching them too." Elias studied him carefully. "You know about 9B?" Marco's smile faded. "Just enough to be terrified." He tapped the cart. "You're not alone. If you're going to war, soldier, make sure it's worth it." "It is," Elias answered without hesitation. Marco nodded once, then walked away. Just like that, Elias felt less like a ghost haunting the corridors and more like a man commanding a mission. He checked his watch. 1 hour until the hospital gala began downstairs. That event meant top administrators distracted, reporters present, and donors eager to praise the facility. It also meant an opportunity for chaos to become cover. He stood outside the secure elevator. The badge reader waited like a silent guard. Not yet, but soon. Tonight, Amelia would breathe air outside that locked floor. Tonight, he would be more than a ghost of a husband. He would be her rescuer. He walked down the empty hall, footsteps slow but steady. Every inch a soldier marching toward the most important battle of his life. And if Archer wanted a war, he'd just chosen the wrong man to provoke. He timed everything to the hospital's rhythms. The gala was at 7. Donors, cameras, applause. And when the world watched the stage, inner defenses would loosen. He'd rehearsed the steps until they felt like muscle. He met the nurse in a dim service stairwell. Paint flaked and a bulb hummed. She looked smaller out of uniform, fingers jittery. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "You shouldn't have left a ring beside an abandoned infant," he said. He spread the duct map on a crate. "We both did what we had to. Now we finish it." She met his gaze. "If Archer finds out, he'll make it someone else's fault," he said. "I need a card to get past readers, cameras looped, and one corridor open for 12 minutes. She produced a taped key card. "I can drop the monitors for 3 minutes. No more. Enough. He slid the map into his jacket. I need witnesses. The atrium will have cameras and reporters. If she walks out there, Archer can't bury her. She swallowed. You think they'll believe you? They'll have to, he said. I've got footage. Next, he found Marco by the loading bay, broom in hand. You found the ring, Marco said. You knew? Elias asked. People talk. You're not invisible to everyone. Marco eyed the glittering atrium. Want a corridor cleared? I need one at 1900. Sanitation leak. A man checks. That's your cue. Marco spat and nodded. Done. Don't get yourself killed. He moved with calm. In the surveillance hub, he'd memorized camera blind spots and copied a clip earlier, a short file showing a pale woman in restraints. He loaded it onto a drive and slid it into his jacket next to the cloned card. He swapped boots for plain shoes and hid his uniform under a jacket that passed in a crowd. Disguise gave access, not lies. He checked the duct route once more. Each turn rattled in his memory like a chant. At 5:30, he texted the nurse, Green light 1900. Console loop 3, elevator hold 5. She replied, standing by. He passed the neonatal wing. The baby slept. The nurse watched with hands clenched. Marco swept in the shadows, a small soldier in a different war. He slipped into the service corridor behind the gala panels. Men in suits passed, unaware a different kind of ceremony began in the walls. He felt both invisible and exposed. The atrium filled. Archer spoke about safety and excellence, smiling like a man who thought image was armor. Cameras trained on him. Perfect timing. He clipped the cloned badge to his jacket and moved as the orchestra swelled. Marco staged the leak. Footsteps trailed away. The service doors opened. Inside, the nurse flicked the monitoring console. Screens stuttered, static, then a loop that told a pleasant lie. He slid to the elevator, the reader blinked green. The shaft smelled of oil. He rode to the duct access, slipped through the panel, and moved like someone born under floors. The air was colder, his heartbeat a drum. He thought of his daughter asleep and tightened his hands. At the ward door, the auxiliary lock surrendered. He eased inside. Machines whispered. There she was. Thinner, hair messy, hooked to tubes, alive. She looked small in the bed, reduced to a chart. His knees wanted to buckle. He steadied. He produced the vial he'd taken from the pharmacy and applied it to the IV. Her eyelids fluttered. Lias? She croaked. 2 words, a compass. He pressed his palm to hers. I'm here. We're getting you out. Recognition sharpened in her gaze. She tried to speak and coughed. He tucked the thumb drive into his pocket. Footage would speak if words failed. He cut restraints, bundled blankets, stabilized lines. Each motion was efficient, practiced, necessary. He checked the hall through the window. The nurse's loop had under 2 minutes left. He needed to move. He lifted her into his arms, feeling the weight of the years, loss, anger, stubborn love. He wrapped her and stepped toward the door. He paused in the corridor, listening. Laughter leaked from the atrium. Voices, clinking glass, a politician's practiced chuckle. Marco slid from the shadows and tapped his shoulder twice. The nurse pressed a thin strip of paper into his hand with a single name, a local freelancer who hated hospital spin. If that reporter saw Amelia, the truth would spread faster than Archer could control. He folded the paper, eyes cold with resolve. There was no going back now, only the road forward. Tonight, the building would no longer be allowed to lie. Now. Downstairs, applause rose. The gala roared. He entered that sound, carrying one fragile life and the proof that would shatter a facade. He moved like a man who'd been unseen and now insisted on being seen. The hallway stretched ahead like a narrow bridge over fire. Sterile white walls, humming vents, and the echo of his rapid breathing. Amelia clung to his shoulder with trembling fingers, eyes barely open as sedation battled her will. Her body was weak, but her presence was a miracle he refused to let slip away again. He adjusted his grip so she wouldn't feel the tremor in his hands. Every step was counted, every sound analyzed. The building was a machine full of teeth, and if it bit down now, it would devour them both. They reached the service stairwell. He nudged the door open with his foot, stepping into the cool darkness. The stairwell lights flickered, one of the glitches he had engineered earlier to cover timing errors in the surveillance system. Planned chaos. Necessary chaos. Amelia's voice rasped against his ear. "Lily, is she safe?" He tightened his hold. "She's perfect. She's waiting for us." Even groggy, the sound of her daughter's name sparked something fierce in her eyes. It pushed him onward. He descended quickly, listening for footsteps. The gala music swelled louder through the walls. Cheers and clinking glasses from wealthy donors who believed they were celebrating heroes tonight. That irony stoked his anger. They toasted medical miracles upstairs while his wife had been buried alive beneath lies. Between floors, he paused to control his breathing. Amelia's weight shifted, and he steadied her. "Almost there," he whispered. The stairwell door for level 2 was ajar. Voices filtered through. Security. He backed into the shadows and held Amelia close, both of them silent. 2 guards walked through the hall, complaining loudly. "Archer's losing his mind," one said. "Ordered us to search maintenance logs." "Why?" the other grumbled. "Something about unauthorized access. Says someone's snooping where they shouldn't." A flicker of amusement crossed his face despite the danger. Archer was already panicking. Good, panic breeds mistakes. The guards continued down the hall, their radios buzzing. He waited a count of 10 before moving again. Level 1, almost the atrium, almost the light, almost justice. He pulled the elevator override switch beside the stairwell exit. Cameras above the elevator doors blinked and looped gently. 2 minutes of visual blindness, exactly as the nurse had promised. His heart hammered gratitude toward the woman risking her livelihood for truth. He stepped into the elevator with Amelia cradled close. They descended the final short level. The doors opened to the back corridor of the gala event. Sound washed over them. Laughter, applause, a speech echoing from the center stage. Archer's voice. A voice polished for donors and media, dripping with sincerity he didn't possess. "A place where every patient matters," Archer proclaimed through speakers. His hands tightened into fists. He waited until the noise peaked, until clapping swallowed the room, and stepped forward into the glow of chandeliers and camera lights. Guests turned slightly, confused at first by the interruption of a maintenance man walking in from the wrong side. Then they noticed his burden. Gasps rippled as Amelia lifted her head weakly. Flashbulbs flickered as someone started recording. Murmurs grew into whispers of disbelief. A security guard began moving toward him, but he raised his voice, loud, steady, commanding. "5 years ago, this hospital declared my wife dead," he said. Archer froze mid-speech. His expression cracked into a panic he failed to hide. "She survived," Elias continued, shifting so cameras caught Amelia fully. "And they hid her." Gasps turned to outrage. A reporter shoved. Closer, phone raised. "Is this true? Who authorized that?" Amelia coughed, but her voice, hoarse and raw, rose enough to be heard. "They isolated me, lied, said my baby died." A collective shock hit the crowd. Archer stumbled backward, face pale. Security formed a wavering line, uncertainty paralyzing their training. No one wanted to be the one to silence a victim in front of 50 cameras. Elias stepped closer to the stage, placing Amelia gently in a chair hastily pulled forward by a stunned donor. Her breathing was shallow but determined. She looked toward Archer with something stronger than fear, hatred. "Tell them why," Elias demanded, voice shaking with the force of 5 years of grief. "Tell them why you kept her locked away." Archer tried regaining composure. "This man is confused. He's trespassing." Elias pulled the flash drive from his pocket. "This shows the room where you kept her. The records you forged. The infant you tried to erase from existence." The crowd erupted. Reporters pressed closer. Someone yelled that police were on the way. The security team shifted, now facing Archer. Archer's assistant attempted to slip away. Marco intercepted her with his mop cart, blocking the exit with a grin. "Wrong way." Archer lunged for the mic again, but this time donors pulled it from him. A woman in a designer dress pointed at him, fury in her eyes. "You lied to grieving families." His power collapsed, stripped away inch by inch under the weight of witnesses. A nurse hurried in, pushing a second crib. Inside was the newborn, safe, alive, connected to Amelia in ways Archer failed to erase. Tears blurred Elias's sight. He bent to Amelia, pressing his forehead to hers. "We're going home," he whispered. She smiled, weak but real. "You found me." He rose again, not as a mechanic or a ghost of a man, but as a husband, a father, and the person who had finally dragged the buried truth into the light. Archer tried to flee. He didn't get 3 steps before the law stopped him. The crowd surged, demanding accountability, chanting for justice as cameras rolled and live streams spread the truth beyond the hospital walls. Tonight wasn't the end. There were still battles ahead. Paperwork, trials, healing, answers for his daughter. But the hardest part was done. Tonight, he had won the right to hope again. Chaos surged through the atrium like a tidal wave. Donors shouted questions, reporters shoved closer, and security struggled to maintain order as Archer was held in place, wrists pinned behind him. Amelia blinked against the brightness, still trying to anchor herself in the reality she'd been denied. Elias stood protectively at her side, one hand hovering near her shoulder, the other curled into a fist he couldn't unclench. A paramedic pushed through the cluster of bodies. "We need to get her to a proper room," he insisted gently. Elias hesitated, scanning every face for threats, but the man's eyes reflected genuine concern, not deceit. "She's coming with me," Elias said, voice gravel. The paramedic nodded, allowing him to guide the wheelchair toward a side hallway. The nurse who had been watching the newborn followed close behind, rolling the infant's crib with careful hands. As they moved away from the crowd, Elias heard a reporter shouting behind them, "Who authorized Unit 9B? Why were patients hidden?" The words cut through the noise like knives, slicing into Archer's carefully protected empire. For years, the hospital controlled the narrative. Now, it was unraveling in real time. Amelia reached weakly for his wrist. "Don't leave me," she whispered. His chest tightened. Never again. They reached a quieter section of the floor where emergency curtains formed a temporary partition. The paramedic checked Amelia's vitals while Elias stood watch, back to the wall. His instincts stayed sharp. He'd survived too much to relax now, not when the enemy was wounded and desperate. Marco appeared a moment later, breathless but grinning. "You did it," he said, leaning on his mop as if it were a staff of victory. "Thought you might like to know. Someone called the State Health Board, and 2 news stations. Archer's about to become famous in the worst way. Elias exhaled slowly, tension easing just a fraction. Thank you. Marco gave a modest shrug. Never liked bullies, especially ones with fancy desks. The paramedic adjusted Amelia's oxygen flow. She's stable enough to speak if needed, he murmured. But keep her calm. She's been through hell. Hell didn't begin to describe it. Elias knelt beside her again, brushing his thumb across her knuckles. I'm sorry I didn't find you sooner. Amelia closed her eyes, breath shaky. You found me now. She opened them again, tears gathering. I thought you and Lily were gone. They told me the fire took everything. His heart cracked anew. They lied. Her fingers tightened around his. I kept fighting, every day. I know. His voice broke. I could feel it. A voice boomed from the direction of the atrium. Archer's. Not calm anymore, snarling, desperate. This is a mistake. She was unstable, dangerous. We kept her secluded for her own protection. Elias stiffened, fury roaring back to life. He looked toward the curtain as Archer continued shouting, spinning lies like lifelines. You want to protect the hospital? Elias muttered. Now they'll see what you protected it from. The nurse approached cautiously with the infant. I think you should hold her, she urged Amelia. Skin-to-skin contact can help both of you. Amelia hesitated, fear flickering. Please, don't take her if I faint. You're safe now, Elias promised. He supported the baby gently as the nurse transferred her into Amelia's arms. The newborn let out a small, questioning cry, and then settled instantly against her chest. Amelia's tears overflowed. She pressed her cheek to the soft, dark hair. My baby, she breathed, the words almost sacred. They told me she died. Elias blinked hard. Our daughter is home waiting for you. This little one, he swallowed. She needs a name and protection. Amelia nodded slowly. Hope, she whispered. The nurse smiled, not the polite, detached smile of duty, but one of shared triumph. Hope suits her. A police officer stepped into the space then, hat tucked under his arm. Sir? Ma'am? He said with respectful gravitas. We're arresting Dr. Archer on multiple felonies, but we need your statement soon. This is going to be a long night. Elias stood, posture straightening as if he wore his uniform again. We'll cooperate, but she needs medical care first. The officer nodded. We're assigning a guard outside her room. Administrative control is suspended. No one touches her without your consent. That assurance finally loosened the knot around Elias's lungs. The walls that once hid his wife now defended her. Justice was shifting sides. As the curtain pulled back, Elias caught sight of Archer being dragged toward the elevators. Shouting still, sweating through his expensive suit. Cameras recorded every second. His empire, built on deception, was collapsing live. Elias stepped forward slightly, ensuring Archer saw him. Their eyes locked. Predator and prey swapped roles. You don't get to win anymore, Elias said quietly. Archer flinched as if struck. The doors shut, severing him from his stage. Elias returned to Amelia and the newborn. The paramedic wrapped warm blankets around them both, guiding the group toward a secure wing where real healing could begin. As they walked, the atrium cheers behind them shifted. Anger turning into applause, outrage reforming into support. People were choosing a side, and it wasn't Archer's. Amelia squeezed his hand again. You saved me, she whispered. No, Elias replied, voice thick. You survived until I got here. Their daughter waited at home. Tomorrow, Amelia would meet the child she risked everything for. Hope would grow between them. 2 children connected by truth and a father who refused to bow to lies. But tonight, as doors opened ahead, Elias finally allowed himself to breathe. Victory wasn't complete yet, but the path forward was no longer darkness. It was dawn. The hospital lights never fully dimmed, but the glow felt different now, less like surveillance and more like protection. A police detail stood guard outside Amelia's temporary room, officers rotating shifts as news outlets continued broadcasting the story that broke in the gala hall. Somewhere above, executives scrambled to sever ties with Archer's decisions. Somewhere below, legal teams prepared the first stack of charges. Elias stayed at Amelia's bedside while hope slept in her, warming cot beside them. Every few moments he would glance between the two, needing the reassurance that both still existed within reach. He stroked Amelia's hair gently, marveling at how something so familiar could seem so fragile. "I used to dream you would walk through the door," Amelia whispered, fingers grazing his hand. "But every time I opened my eyes, it was the same walls." Elias swallowed the ache rising in his chest. "You're not going back there." Her gaze held him. "They said you died," she murmured. "They showed me a report, a picture of Lily's empty crib." Her voice broke. "I thought I failed you both." He leaned in to kiss her knuckles. "They needed you silent, but you survived them." Hope whimpered softly, and Amelia reached out. Elias lifted the baby, placing her gently into her mother's arms. The infant nuzzled closer, breathing slow and secure. Amelia's face transformed, joy breaking through years of sedation and stolen reality. "I missed her first cry," she said quietly. "Her first heartbeat outside me, her first everything. That changes now," Elias murmured. "We build the rest together." The curtain opened. A doctor stepped in. Someone Elias recognized but never really knew. Dr. Patel, head of maternal care. She held a tablet and a weary expression. "I owe both of you an apology," Patel said, closing the curtain behind her. "We failed you. Our facility failed you. I suspected something was wrong in the records, but Archer kept all data above my clearance. I'm so sorry." Apologies didn't give back stolen years, but they mattered more than silence. "What happens now?" Elias asked. "Now," Patel replied, "we write the real truth. Amelia receives full medical evaluation and care. Hope is registered properly, and both of you are placed under federal protection until the investigation concludes." Elias nodded slowly. "And Archer?" Patel's voice hardened. "He's not the only one under review." She glanced toward the hallway. "There will be hearings, lawsuits, media attention, but we'll fight with you, not against you." Her voice cracked. "This building should have saved you. Instead, it imprisoned you. We are going to change that." Amelia whispered, "Thank you," with a softness that made the doctor blink back tears. Patel turned to Elias. "You look like you haven't slept in a decade. There's a family room 2 doors down, sofas, showers. Take a break. We'll stay with her." He hesitated. Leaving was the hardest command he'd ever received. But Amelia nodded gently. "Go," she urged. "Come back with Lily." Those words steadied him. He kissed Amelia once more and headed out. The hallway buzzed with media voices, police radios, and hospital staff struggling to restore order to their world. As he walked toward the elevator, faces turned, some apologetic, others in awe. People who once ignored him now saw a father who had exposed a giant. "Sir," a reporter called, stepping forward with camera crew in tow. "Can you speak with us? The public is desperate for answers. They're calling you a hero." He paused. Heroism had never been his aim, truth was, but he also knew silence allowed lies to grow. I didn't do this for attention, he said clearly. I did it because my wife was alive, and no one was looking for her. Because a newborn needed protection, not abandonment. Because lies don't get to decide who lives or dies. The reporter held the mic closer. What would you say to families who fear their loved ones were treated the same way? Elias met her eyes. Fight. Ask questions. Don't let titles or walls convince you you're powerless. Gasps and camera flashes followed his every word. Another voice cut through the noise, sharp, furious. You don't belong here. Archer's assistant, wrists cuffed, struggled against police as she yelled. You ruined everything. Do you think exposing one patient makes you righteous? You destroyed a program that saved this institution. Elias stepped forward calmly. You destroyed families. I just found mine again. The assistant spat toward him, missing by several feet, before officers dragged her toward a waiting vehicle. Her screams echoed like the last gasp of a regime collapsing. Several nurses nearby began applauding. Slowly, more joined. Janitors, orderlies, cafeteria staff. People who spent their lives unseen just like him. A low chant spread through the floor. Protect the patients, protect the truth. Marco appeared at his side, arms crossed over his mop. A janitor and an electrician just made the evening news, he said with a grin. Bet Archer didn't see that on his spreadsheets. Elias cracked a tired smile. Thank you for having my back. Thank you, Marco replied. For reminding the suits that this place is built by hands like ours. Elias stepped into the family room long enough to splash cold water on his face. Then he returned to Amelia's side. She slept now, hope curled like a warm promise against her. He sat, letting exhaustion creep into his bones, and still, relief was heavier than fatigue. He wasn't a ghost haunting the hospital anymore. He was a husband who resurrected truth, a father who refused to grieve a lie, a soldier who came home with what mattered most. Tomorrow, he would bring Lily. Tomorrow, a broken world would start repairing itself. Tonight, love had survived the grave. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, soft and warm. A light Amelia hadn't seen in 5 years without sedation dulling the edges of the world. Elias opened his eyes to find her already awake, hope resting against her chest. Amelia's hand traced the baby's cheek like she was memorizing reality to replace the nightmares. You stayed, she whispered. He smiled gently. I always will. A knock sounded. The door opened, slowly, revealing a small figure clutching a worn, stuffed rabbit, Lily. Her eyes widened, questioning, hopeful, frightened all at once. Elias knelt. Sweetheart, remember how you asked if angels could come back when they're ready? Lily nodded, bottom lip trembling. He stepped aside, letting her see the woman sitting in the bed. Amelia's breath hitched, tears rising. She opened her arms, shaky but welcoming. Mommy, Lily whispered, barely audible. Yes, Amelia breathed. Yes, baby, I'm here. Lily rushed into her embrace, burying her face into the mother she had only known through bedtime stories and framed photos. Amelia held both daughters close. One she carried into life, one she fought to stay alive for, all wrapped into her arms like a miracle made solid. Elias turned his head away for a moment, swallowing emotion so fierce it nearly unmade him. A doctor stepped in quietly. We'll start formal statements soon, but take today, you deserve that. He nodded, grateful beyond speech. The officer guarding the door simply tipped his hat, a small sign of respect. Later that afternoon, the three of them sat together, sunlight filling the sterile room with warmth. Elias handed Amelia a plain folder, documents the legal team drafted. She skimmed the pages, recognizing seals and signatures. "They're granting full protective custody," she murmured, voice cracking. "We stay together," he confirmed. "Archer can't touch you or them." Amelia closed the folder and exhaled. "Thank you." He shook his head. "No, thank you for surviving." A soft knock broke the quiet. Marco entered carrying a grocery sack. "Hospital eggs taste like regret," he declared. "So, I figured you might want something edible." Elias laughed, strange and freeing. Marco winked at Amelia. He's a stubborn one. Knew it the minute he tried to fix a vending machine that ate my change. Amelia smiled, small but real. "Thank you for helping him." Marco tipped an imaginary crown. "We blue-collar warriors gotta stick together." As the day wore on, the energy in the room shifted from fear to relief, from desperation to rebuilding. The future wasn't a void anymore. It was a landscape they would learn to walk again, step by step. Hours later, a court officer arrived with final papers. "Archer's in custody and denied bail," he confirmed. "There will be trials, but justice has momentum now." The nurse who risked everything stepped in behind him. Her voice trembled. "I didn't know how to make it right until I saw that ring." Amelia reached for her hand. "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved hope." The nurse cried quietly, and Elias clasped her shoulder in gratitude strong enough to speak 1,000 thanks. Eventually, the room grew quiet again. Just family. Elias pulled out the ring, the same one that started everything. "May I?" he asked. Amelia nodded, tears glimmering like tiny suns. He slid the ring onto her finger, where it belonged. "Welcome home," he whispered. She looked at Lily, then at Hope, then finally at him. "Let's go home." The hospital arranged a private exit to avoid cameras, but Marco insisted on escorting them out. His mop like a soldier's staff. Nurses lined the hallway, offering waves and soft applause. Not a spectacle, just acknowledgement. Respect. Outside, the sky stretched wide, washed clean by dawn. Elias opened the passenger door for Amelia and gently placed Hope into her carrier. Lily climbed in beside her, fingers interlocked with her mother's. He sat behind the wheel and looked at the woman he'd loved through war, through tragedy, through death declared too early. "Where to first?" he asked. Amelia smiled, gaze fixed ahead. "Anywhere," she said, "as long as we're together." He shifted into drive. Tires rolled smoothly across pavement. Each yard traveled away from the building was a step out of grief and into the life they were owed. As the hospital disappeared in the rearview mirror, Elias reached over and squeezed Amelia's hand. Love had outlasted lies. Truth had outlived death. Family had defeated power. And hope had a name. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now. Share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from. Subscribe and don't miss our next story. Title: Trust me, you'll feel it. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?